Hello everybody and welcome back to another session of Max on Max. Today we'll be talking about an extremely helpful application called Zoom, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, whether you'd like to or not at this point. And it's very helpful, but it's also a little bit complicated, so I'm going to unpack some of the more complicated features of it today and go over those with you. And so to begin, let's talk about how we enter the Zoom application. For a lot of you guys, you might never actually click on the Zoom app, which is the one down here at the bottom. It's the little blue camera. You guys might actually just click on links that are sent to you by other people. And that is the way I'm going to recommend you keep doing it. So if you are being invited to a meeting, as in you are not the one who's hosting the meeting, the best way to enter that meeting is by pressing on the blue link that whoever is hosting the meeting sent to you. And clicking on that link will ask you, do you want to open Zoom? You'll say yes, and then all of the steps will be done for you. So you'll just click on that, and then before you know it, you'll actually be inside of your Zoom meeting. However, if you are going to be hosting a meeting, you have to enter the Zoom application first. So let's start off by talking about a couple different ways to host a meeting. When you open the Zoom app for the first time, you actually probably will not see a screen like this. You'll likely see something that says either sign in or create or join a meeting. And so in order to host a meeting, you're actually going to have to create an account. And I recommend everyone does this just in case they have to host a meeting at some point in their lives. Creating an account is free. A free account will actually allow you to host a meeting that is up to 40 minutes in length. A way to get around that is if you do want to have a meeting that's longer than 40 minutes, you can actually just create 2 invitations to that meeting, go to one meeting for 40 minutes, and then have everyone who you want to be on the meeting with click on the second link right after the 40 minutes expires. So there's a way to get around it. However, if you really do want to pay for the premium Zoom subscription, that will allow you to have meetings that are unlimited in length. I have a premium account just through my school. I don't really recommend that many people buy a premium account unless you know that you're going to be regularly hosting Zoom meetings that are longer than 40 minutes in length. But regardless, I do recommend everyone have a free account. So if you haven't done that yet, just go ahead and sign up with Zoom. It's fairly easy to do. Make sure you have the Zoom client downloaded. That's this little application along the bottom here. And then you'll be ready to go for hosting as well as attending meetings. So once you're signed in, this is the screen that it'll show you. Your initials will be up here in the top right corner. Everything else will be the same as what you're seeing right here. And we have a couple interesting options just straight from this screen. The first one here is the new meeting button. So that's if you want to start a new meeting that you could then invite other people to. So pressing on this button will look like this, and you can see me in double time. I'm actually going to mute myself here. And from this meeting, you can actually invite other people. And this is going to be different than a scheduled meeting, which is what we're going to talk about in a second here. But this is a meeting that we're just starting at any time of the day. We're not previously inviting people to it. We're just going to start it and then invite people after the meeting's already started. And so let me go through what that looks like. If you want to invite people to a meeting that's already running, such as this one right now, all you have to do is go down here to where it says participants. Click on that. That'll open up this screen over here that'll show you the participants in the meeting. Then you'll actually come down here to where it says invite, and you'll click there. And then what I recommend you do is come down here to where it says copy invite link. Just click on that guy right there, and then go into your email of choice, whether you go to the Mail app along the bottom here, or if you open up Safari or Chrome and go to your email that way. I'll open up Chrome here, and I've got this link copied. And what I'll do is I'll go and start a new message just by going like this. And I'm just going to paste that link into the body of this message. When I send that to whoever it is, they'll then just be able to click on that link and join my meeting immediately. So that is the way that I recommend you invite people to a meeting that has already started. But let me show you the other way of starting a meeting, and that's through the schedule button. So right underneath new meeting here is the word schedule. And when you click on that, this is actually for making a meeting that you're not going to be starting right now and that you can send invites to for the future. So you can title it whatever you want. I'll just leave mine as the normal default. It'll just say your name's Zoom meeting. Then you set the date. You can set a start time as well as an end time. You can also make this a recurring meeting. If this is going to be an every week meeting of like a book club or something like that, you could click this button and this link is actually going to work every single week at the time that you designate. You'll get a meeting ID. You can just leave this the way that it is. You can leave this required meeting password checked. The reason being, you don't need to enter in a password as long as you are joining the meeting by clicking on the link that is sent to you. So the only reason you'd ever need a password to a meeting is if you are going to join the meeting by typing in the ID and password, which is another way to join a meeting, although I recommend that none of you guys do it. I recommend that you always just click on the link that says join Zoom meeting. Click on that guy, and that way you'll never have to enter in the password. However, most of the time the password is in the email that is sent to you just as a backup in case you need to do it that way. All these other settings are completely personal preference, whether you want your video to automatically be turned on when you get in, whether you want people to only be using audio that's coming from their computer, and whether you want this to automatically be added to a calendar. Once these are all set up for you, all you have to do is press schedule. And just like that, it will add it to my calendar. I'm going to actually bypass that happening. But here's my scheduled Zoom. You can see it right here. An easier way to see it is actually to come up to the top here where it says home and press on meetings. And then you'll see these are going to be all of your upcoming meetings. And so if you have a lot of meetings scheduled, they'll be listed out here. I only have this one that I'm using as a test. And from here, the next step would be to actually invite people to your meeting. So the scheduled meeting isn't going to be much help if people don't know that it's scheduled. And so what we're going to do there is we're actually going to copy an invitation right here. And that's just you highlight your meeting on the side. It'll pop up on the right side here. And then right next to the start button is copy invitation. Click on that guy. Same process. We'll go to your email. Open up your email. Start a new message. We'll come down to the body and we'll just paste in this invitation. It'll have everything including the link. Right here it'll say join Zoom meeting link. It'll give them the topic and the time as well as the ID and passcode down here. And then all you do is you put in whatever you want your subject to be. I'll just say Zoom meeting link. And then you type in your recipients up at the top and press send. And that way, this link will be ready for them when it's time to join the meeting. And so those are the two ways that I recommend anyone start a Zoom meeting. And the scheduled one is the one that people know a little bit less about, but it can be very helpful to have that on the books. For instance, my family is doing a scheduled Zoom meeting for Christmas Eve because we're not getting together in person this year. We're going to do a Christmas Eve Zoom that's already scheduled. It's on the books. We've sent out the email last week, so now no one has an excuse to not show up. But it can be very, very helpful to just have that sitting there and have people gain access to that link in advance. So I'm going to delete this meeting. I don't really want to have a scheduled Zoom meeting for 15 minutes from now, but that can be very helpful, and you would just leave that ready to go until it's time, and then when it is time for that meeting to actually begin, you would come into the Zoom app and you would press start, and then everyone else can join the meeting right after you. And so those are those two buttons right here. The only other button that really matters from this screen is this join button. This would be only for specific situations in which you did not have a Zoom link to click on. This would be if you need to type in an ID and a password to a meeting yourself. You would press this join button, you would type in the meeting ID, you would type in the name that you want to be, and then as soon as you press join here, it'll ask for a password, which you would also have access to. You'd enter that in, and then you'd be in the meeting. Obviously, that's a lot more steps than just pressing on a link. So that's why I would normally recommend people press on the link. And just let me show you really quickly. When I talk about a link, I'm talking about when we're looking at an invitation, such as the one that we have copied right now. When I'm talking about the link, I'm talking about this guy right here. It'll start with the HTTPS, and it'll be right underneath join Zoom meeting. If you get sent an email and you see this is what I want you to click on, because that'll take you straight into the meeting. However, if that doesn't work, you'll see the meeting ID and passcode are right underneath it. So then you could enter in these numbers where it says join. You put in the meeting ID here, and then the password would be, it would ask for the password right after this. So that is how we do joining and scheduling meetings. Now let's talk about what happens when we're actually inside of a meeting, because there's a lot of different buttons around that actually can really affect your experience. So let's pretend that we're in a meeting. To do that, I'm just actually going to start a fake meeting here. I'm not actually going to join with my audio here. But you can see as soon as I join the meeting, I can see myself. If there were actually other people in this meeting, I would see them too across the top of the screen. But let's talk about some of the buttons that are along the bottom, because you might have seen these guys and maybe not known exactly what they mean. So starting on the bottom, you'll see this is what we call the audio button, and it'll say one of three things. It'll either say join audio. If you see the word join audio down here, it means that no one can hear you, and you also cannot hear them yet. So if you ever see join audio in a meeting, you need to press that, and then you need to press right here where it says join with computer audio. And then your audio button will turn to this mute or unmute button. When you want to be talking, go ahead and put it onto unmute, which is just clicking where it says unmute here, and there will no longer be a line through the microphone. And then when you want to stop talking, click it again. So right now I'm talking, and you can see that this little green line fills up in the microphone as I'm talking. But when I'm done talking, I'm going to press the mute button again, and now no one will be able to hear me in the meeting. And so just the proper etiquette for Zoom is to leave yourself on mute unless you are actively talking. And that's especially important for larger Zoom calls that maybe have upwards of 4 or 5 people on them, just because background noise in your house and stuff can be distracting. So most of the time you're going to want to leave it with this little cross through the microphone, just remembering that no one will be able to hear you if that cross is through the microphone. Next to that is your video button. And this is another important one. If you see the camera without a line through it, that means that your video is turned on. Similarly, you could see a join video button down here, and that would mean no one can see you. So you are going to want to join the video, but it is completely up to you whether you want your video on or off the screen. You can see if I stop my video here, no one can see me, they just see a black screen, my name, and this would show up to everyone else on the Zoom. And there's a little red line through the video button down here. Pressing that again will actually allow me to come back. So as far as etiquette goes, normally you leave yourself on video, even if you're in a large group meeting, unless asked not to. So for instance, for my online classes at school, I'm asked to keep my video on in my smaller classes, but in my larger classes where it would take more bandwidth to have everyone's cameras on, I'm actually asked to have it off. But the way you can toggle that is just by pressing this button. Next to both the audio and the video button, you'll notice that there's a little up arrow. And that is just going to give us more options about audio or video. So if we press on the up arrow next to audio, It'll give you all this stuff. It'll allow you to select a microphone, which normally you won't have to do. Your default microphone is fine. It'll also allow you to select an output or speaker. Again, your default is fine. None of you should really have to do this unless you actually can't hear the Zoom. If you can't hear the Zoom, or other people are complaining that they can't hear you, come here and do this test speaker and microphone. That will run you through a test, and it'll tell you if your speakers or microphone are not functional. And if they're not, maybe at that point call me and we can get you sorted out there. These options you don't really need to worry about, and then if you really want to get specific, you can come down here to audio settings, but I recommend that no one really do that. Next to video, the only interesting thing here, you could select a camera if you for some reason have multiple cameras on your device, but the main interesting part here is actually choosing a virtual background. Now, you guys might have played around with virtual backgrounds in the past. It is a cool feature that Zoom has that pretty much puts everything that's not your face and body, puts a background behind it. It's like using a green screen, but you don't actually have to have a green screen to use it. So if I go here to choose virtual background, I can click any of these default ones here. So I'm just going to do the Golden Gate Bridge. And you can see right back here, and I'll return to the meeting, that they've actually put in this Golden Gate Bridge behind me. You can't see the wall or anything. You can just see my body. Now you can see it's not perfect. It is missing like parts of my hair and stuff like that. But if you do have a distracting background, sometimes using a virtual background can be helpful. Just because it'll make people only focus on you. However, keep in mind that it doesn't work perfectly, so before you actually use it in an important meeting, try it out yourself and see if it makes you look weird or if the background is flickering or something like that. Mine works pretty well because the wall behind me is just a plain white wall, but if you have a lot of stuff in the background or things are going to be moving around in the background, it won't work quite as well. So I would say this is not something you need to use very frequently, but it can be helpful every now and then. If you have it turned on and you want to turn it off, we go through the same process by clicking on the little up arrow next to the video here, going to choose virtual background, and then switching it back to none. And now we're back to normal. You can see I look a little bit more normal. You can still see the edges of my hair and stuff like that. So that is one cool thing that I want you guys all to at least know how to do. Aside from that, let's keep moving along the buttons along the bottom here. The first button is the security button. They added this in a couple months ago after they found out that people were joining Zoom rooms that they weren't invited to. This is essentially going to allow you as the host of the meeting to change settings for other people in the meeting. One of those is lock the meeting. That'll allow no one else to join the meeting aside from the people who are actually in it already. And then this will allow people inside of the meeting to do certain things, such as chat or share their screens or rename themselves or unmute themselves. These are mostly good for like larger Zoom groups. Most of you, even if you are hosting a meeting, won't need to deal with this. If you're not hosting a meeting, you won't even see this button. So that's one that we don't really have to worry about too much. The participants button is more helpful. We've actually already visited this previously when we were sending an invite to people. But if you click on this guy, you'll actually have the invite button, which we saw at the bottom. As the host, you'll see another button down here that says mute all. So if people are not muting themselves and there's a lot of background noise, you can actually press this button. It'll mute everybody in the meeting except for you. The more button here will give you a whole bunch of other options. Most of these are actually duplicates of what we saw in the security button a second ago. But the main thing over here is actually it's going to show you a list of everybody who's in the meeting. And it'll do that just in order here. You'll always be at the top, but other than that, it'll be most of the time alphabetical order down here. And hovering over any person will actually give you options if you're the host. So you can mute or unmute people by hovering over them. You can actually rename them if you want to. Or if there are more people in the meeting, you could actually remove them from the meeting at this point. This is also helpful when you're just attending a meeting, because you can open up this list and then you can just get essentially an alphabetized list of every single person who's in the meeting. From there, you'll actually be able to initiate a message to them if you want to. If you want to just message them on the side, or really just use it for reference to see who's talking. Another helpful part of the participant screen here, this is again more helpful for larger groups, are you can come into participants and use these little buttons at the bottom to indicate things to the speaker in the meeting without actually interrupting them with your voice. So if you could do a poll where the options are yes or no, you could ask them to go faster or slower, and there's more stuff like a thumbs up, thumbs down, clapping, I need a break, or I'm not on the meeting anymore. So those are helpful, especially for larger groups. If you're just one-on-one with someone, you probably could just tell them these things, but if you're in a group with 20 people, maybe you don't want to interrupt, and those are cool. If you ever want to get rid of the participant screen, you can actually come up here to this little down arrow and then press close, and that'll just take you back to the normal screen. The next option over here is chat, which can be cool. This will allow anyone in the meeting to just kind of almost text back and forth. It's like a group chat essentially for everyone in the meeting. You can send just normal text here. Another cool thing is you can share a file in here. So let's say you are presenting a file to people in your meeting. You can actually come in and send that file in here so everyone has their own copy to refer to. And the way that works is you send in the file and then everyone is able to download that file for the duration of the meeting. So that's something to keep in mind. People will be able to download and have a copy of that file for themselves if you do send it. But especially if you're the host of a meeting and you're presenting a document or a presentation, sending that to everyone through the chat can be helpful just so they can refer back to it after the meeting is over. Again, to close this out, we come up to the arrow here and then we press close. Coming along the bottom, this is another really cool option. It's the share screen button. I use this a lot. This is what I use when we're normally doing these Zoom meetings. And pressing on this will actually allow you to share either your entire screen or portions of your screen with people in your Zoom meeting. I normally use the entire screen button, but I'll show you what happens when I press share screen here. So when I press on this guy, I have a couple of different options. The first option here is desktop 1. And desktop 1 is what it's going to show for you most likely as well. And if you just click on that, it will share your entire screen. So regardless of what application I'm in, everything will be shown if I press this. These other options are not something you're ever really going to be using. If these look interesting to you and you want more in-depth information on it, let me know. We can do a session on that. But for the most part, it's not something you need to do. But then after that, you'll see all of your windows that you have open on the bottom here. So let's say you didn't want to share your whole screen, but you did just want to share a document that you had opened. That document, as long as you have it opened on your desktop back here, will show up as one of the options to share. And then you can just click on that. The only other window I have open is the video of me. But if you click on that, it will only share that portion of your screen. So people won't be able to see what's on your desktop or what apps you have installed or anything like that. They'll just only be able to see the application that you're using. But regardless of what you pick, the one that's highlighted in blue is your selection. Then you can press share like this. And then your screen will turn to this little green highlight that I hope you guys can see. The green highlight will be surrounding whichever part of your screen is being shared. In this case, I'm sharing the entire screen, so it'll be a green highlight around everything. You'll see if you hover up to the top of the screen, you'll see a whole bunch of options here. You can pause the share. You can actually annotate on your screen with like a little pen. You can stop your video, unmute yourself, just the same things we saw before, bring up the participant screen. But the most important part up here is this little red button that says stop share. As soon as you press that, no one will be able to see your screen share anymore. So that's important to know how to start it, but also how to stop it. You guys probably won't be using this an overwhelming amount, but for instance, if you're on with me and we're doing a remote Zoom appointment, I will normally ask you to share your screen, and that's pretty much how you do it. The first time you do it, it will ask you to turn on a couple things in settings. If you do get confused with that, feel free to just reach out to me and I can send you some more detailed steps on how to do it. Unfortunately, I can't replicate it today because I've already gone through those steps on this computer. But once you have those set up and you've given the computer or you've given the application Zoom permission to access certain parts of your computer, then you will be able to share your screen. And let me tell you, it's very, very helpful. Next to that is a record button. You can record your Zoom meeting if you want. Again, this is only available to the host of a meeting, but that's great if you want to go back and refer to it. Sharon and I record our Zoom meetings, and that's how we send them to you. This is the live transcript button. This is pretty much closed captioning, and Zoom will try to close caption your meeting for you, which can be helpful. This is the breakout rooms button. This is how to send people to smaller breakout rooms. Again, only important for larger meetings. As a audience member of a Zoom, you would actually just be forced into a breakout room if I were to press on this breakout rooms button here. And really what that does is if it was, for instance, a Zoom with 50 people on it, I could make 10 breakout rooms of 5 people if I wanted you guys to discuss something that I just said or something like that. And what will happen is if you're in the meeting, it'll just say, the host has asked you to join breakout room 5, and you'll say yes, and then it'll essentially pop up with just you and maybe 4 other members from the Zoom, and you guys can then chat about whatever is being talked about. And then the final option down here is just the reactions button. This will allow you to react to things, and there's exactly 2 options here, either a clap emoji or a thumbs up emoji. That will just show up on the screen. If you agree with something that the speaker is saying, you can say that, and then they will see it and maybe appreciate it. That one's kind of a gimmick. And then down here, if you're the host, the red button will say end. And then if you just press this, it'll give you either leave meeting or end meeting for all. If you're the host and you want to end the meeting, you would normally just press end meeting for all here. If you're in a Zoom meeting, then this will actually be a red button that says leave meeting. And all you'll do is press on that, and then you'll be gone from the meeting, but it won't affect the meeting for anyone else. But remember, if you are the host and you press end meeting for all, that means everyone is going to be off the meeting as soon as you press that. So I'm going to press that now. That'll just return me back to this normal screen here. That pretty much covers most of the buttons that we have, most of the options that we have within the Zoom app. I do understand Zoom can be confusing, especially if you haven't used it very often. So of course, if anyone has any further questions or anything I didn't cover today, I'd be happy to do a one-on-one session or another group session like this where I record a video and send it to everyone if you guys want me to get more specific about certain things. But it definitely is a very handy tool to know how to use. So I do want everyone to really have that ability to be proficient in it. So of course, if you do need some more help on it, feel free to reach out to me either at max@itkid.co, that's MAX at itkid.co, or call or text me at 925-482-5488, and I'd be happy to do any sort of session with you. And of course, guys, I love doing these videos for you guys, so keep the questions coming. Anything that you're confused about, that you think other people might be confused about as well, send those in to Sharon. She sends them to me, and I can record these videos for you guys. Love doing it, so keep them coming. All right, take care, everybody.